announcing the arrival of Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Sri Anwar bin Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia, accompanied by distinguished guests.
Keyakinan jadi ikutan, pendirian jiwa ihsan, nilai hormat keras diminda, daya cipta luar biasa, kesejahteraan masa depan. Ayo seluruh anak pertiwi.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Sri Anwar bin Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia. Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Diraja Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir, Minister of Higher Education. Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Utama Muhammad bin Haji Hassan, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Syamsul Azri bin Abu Bakar, Chief Secretary to the Government. Tan Sri, Datuk, Professors, Doctors, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon. Welcome to the Forum Ilmuan Malaysia Madani, organized by the Ministry of Higher Education. We are honored by your presence at today's forum titled Strategies for Malaysia and ASEAN in an Era of Global Instability. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we shall now proceed with the welcoming remarks. It is my pleasure to invite Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Diraja Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir, Minister of Higher Education, to deliver the welcoming address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a blessed Ramadan Kareem. Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, Perdana Menteri Malaysia. Yang Berhormat Kanda saya, Datuk Seri Muhammad Haji Hassan, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Profesor Jeffrey Sachs, Tan Sri, tuan-tuan dan perempuan yang saya hormati sekalian. Selamat datang ke Forum Ilmuan Madani edisi 2026. Welcome to Forum Ilmuan Madani 2026 edition. Forum Ilmuan Madani brings together scholars, policymakers, and thinkers to reflect on the questions shaping our time. And today, we meet at a moment when the global environment is becoming increasingly uncertain. Geopolitical tensions continue to reshape international relations in the age of power. Economic systems are adjusting to new pressures, while rapid technological change is transforming societies at a pace few could have anticipated. This development raised important questions for Malaysia and for our regions. How should we respond in an era of global instability? How can ASEAN navigate these changes with clarity and confidence? To discuss this, we are especially pleased to welcome Professor Jeffrey Sachs to Madani Intellectual Forum. Professor Sachs is widely recognized as one of the world's most influential economists and public intellectuals. For decades, his scholarship and policy engagement have shaped global conversations on sustainable development, poverty eradication, global economic governance, and international cooperations. And in recent years, his voice has also been important in examining the complex geopolitical and economic forces shaping our world today, including the developments unfolding in the Middle East and the wider implications for global stability, development, and peace. It is therefore a privilege for us to hear his thought this afternoon. Continuing this, the tradition of Forum Ilmuan Madani, today's intellectual discourse will be chaired by none other than our Prime Minister, Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, and whose leadership continues to emphasize the importance of knowledge, intellectual engagement, and thoughtful debate in shaping the nation's future. Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri, now we turn to you to lead this discussion. Over to you. Sekian, terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Nahmadu wa nusalli ala rasulih karim. Rakan-rakan menteri, termasuk menteri luar dan menteri pendidikan tinggi, Profesor Jeffrey Sachs, tetamu-tamu yang saya muliakan. Kita teruskan dengan tradisi wacana ilmu dalam forum ilmuwan madani ini untuk memastikan negara terus berakar kepada tradisi ilmu yang lebih mantap. Dan oleh itu saya ucap terima kasih kepada Menteri Pendidikan Tinggi kerana menjadi tuan rumah pada hari ini tanpa teh dan makan minum. I said this is an exception, it's Ramadan, so is very cheap for the Ministry of Education. No tea. Prof. Sachs, let me begin by expressing my profound regard, gratitude to you. We have followed your discourses, your courage and tenacity, dealing with some very controversial issues with courage and conviction. And therefore, on behalf of the Malaysian government, of course, it is a rare pleasure to welcome such an outstanding scholar of such repute. But may I also thank Professor Jeff of Sunway, who has given us this opportunity at his cost. His passion for education and scholarship is unrivaled, and I must therefore thank on behalf of our colleagues here. Distinguished scholars, guests, ladies and gentlemen, we meet today in the midst of a war foisted on a sovereign state of Iran and its people, driven by the hegemonic ambitions of Israel in West Asia, and principally aided and abetted by the formidable war machine of the United States of America. Targeted killings of spiritual, political, military leaders are executed with surgical precision, while missile attacks massacre school children as they go about their lessons. As the statistics of the dead continue to pile up, not just in Iran, but elsewhere, as in the Gaza and Lebanon, cities of rich historical heritage are indiscriminately bombed, while key water and energy installations are blown out of existence. This tragedy can never be measured in cold numbers, because the death and destruction are in fact the manifestation of a more profound geopolitical reality. And it is a deep-seated, heinous, and insatiable desire to annihilate, to dominate, and to conquer at all costs. Inasmuch as history reminds us that instability in this region rarely remains confined within its borders, the escalation of this war has already sparked massive disruptions in global energy markets. I just presided an emergency meeting of the Economic Advisory Council. And we, of course, had to deliberate some key issues because the war has its ramifications throughout the world and affecting us here in Malaysia. So it's far-reaching geopolitical and geoeconomic consequences for the entire world. Fractured communities, weakened institutions, and the erosion of trust. In this regard, Malaysia, as underscored by the bipartisan stand of our parliament, has taken a principled position to condemn the Israeli aggression and the United States as perpetrators in this aggression against an independent, sovereign country, the Islamic Republic of Iran. And at the same time call for restraint, de-escalation, and renewed diplomatic engagement across the region. Yet the situation remains deeply alarming as countries in the Gulf Cooperation Council, Turkey, Azerbaijan, face repeated attacks with the violence affecting even countries as far as Jordan, Turkey, and Azerbaijan, as I alluded to earlier. If international law is to retain credibility, it must apply equally to all. Principles lose their authority when they are invoked selectively. These inconsistencies undermine confidence in the very foundations of the international system. Ladies and gentlemen, after the First World War, John Maynard Keynes published The Economic Consequences of the Peace. I think Professor Sachs have learned it by heart. Purportedly advocating for the economic well-being of the world. Today, staring us in the face are the economic consequences of the war that extend far beyond the killing fields. War disrupts production, damages infrastructure, diverts national resources towards military expenditure rather than development. These pressures translate into higher energy prices, rising inflation, greater fiscal restraint, and ultimately hardship, misery for the majority of our people. So this afternoon's discussion is particularly significant as we are joined by Professor Jeffrey Sachs, one of the world's most distinguished economists and public policy thinkers. I underline public policy because I know him more as a public intellectual. Voice of conscience, courage. Sachs for decades has worked as the intersection of economics, development, and global governance. At a time when the world faces interconnected challenges, voices such as yours, Professor Sachs, remind us that many of the problems confronting humanity cannot be addressed by nations acting alone. They require cooperation, imagination, and sustained commitment. The endurance of the international order will ultimately depend not only on institutions or agreements, but on whether nations remain willing to uphold the principles that give those structures meaning. The Bard reminds us that the evil that men do leaves after them, the good is oft interred in the bones. Let us not suffer the same fate. I earnestly believe that if the international community is to rebuild trust in the global system, it must demonstrate that the protection of human dignity is not conditional and that justice is not a bargaining chip to be parlayed for strategic gain. Justice must be the very lifeblood of humanity, of our humanity, regardless of color, creed, or nationality. Malaysia, inshallah, will continue to stand firmly for these principles. I look forward to a thoughtful and enriching exchange with Professor Jeffrey Sachs, with all of you. Terima kasih.
Prime Minister, thank you for those important, clear, trenchant, truthful words, which we're all extraordinarily grateful for. If more world leaders would speak like you, we would have peace. This may be our biggest challenge, is that we have such a hard time speaking truth in the world today. And it seems that brutal power makes it very, very difficult for even leaders of countries to say with such clarity and honesty and importance what your Prime Minister has just said. Let me say what an honor it is to be here and, of course, to be sitting next to you, Prime Minister, but also how inspiring it is that Malaysia is hosting events like this. You've explained an intellectual discourse, an open discussion, government leaders and leaders of civil society here and government officials to brainstorm. Nothing could be more important and more inspiring, I want to tell you. In my country, we don't have this. We don't have discourse now. We don't have discussion. We have truth social posts. That's about it. And if you say anything contrary, it's not so simple. The universities get their budget slashed. The retribution comes swiftly. It's a very brutal environment. And this is really the great danger, because the problems that we have, ladies and gentlemen, are all solvable. The most core and important point is there is enough to go around in the world for everybody. We are not in any intrinsic struggle with each other. There is no real contest between the US and China that matters, because everybody can be prosperous. No country needs to be against any other country. We're not in a struggle for survival against each other. Quite the contrary. We need cooperation in order for all of us to thrive. This is the most basic point. But there's no limit to what we can accomplish if we are cooperative and peaceful. Let me say at the outset that this ministry is extraordinarily important for that. There is no investment in society more important than knowledge and education. And so I want to thank the Ministry of Higher Education and the Minister for hosting this, but also for your leadership. I'm seeing the fruits of that leadership every visit, and the visits are frequent, and we're thrilled with the frequency. But we were at Tan Sri Jeffrey Chia's university, Sunway University, this morning. It's booming. Students everywhere, coming from all over the world now, because this is high-quality education. And students are coming from China, from across ASEAN, from across the world, because they know this is a place they want to be, this is a welcoming country, and this is an outstanding high-quality education. And this is a great mark of the future of this country as well. You will be producing the intellectual leaders for the world for the years to come. Thank you very much for that. And thank you, Tan Sri, Jeffrey Chia. It's amazing. Every time we go, there's a new big building, absolutely gorgeous. The medical department we saw today, the world's greatest bookstore we saw today, 24/7, and 2 coffee shops there. So we should all hang out at the bookstore. It's got seemingly every book now, so it's absolutely a thrill. Yet, with all of this, the world is in a mess. And so we should understand why it is in a mess. Of course, there are some intrinsic challenges of the climate crisis, the environmental needs, the dramatic changes of technology, which are both promise and peril at the same time, because every technology can be for the human good, but it can also easily be weaponized or run completely out of control. But our biggest problem is our stubborn incapacity to get along with each other and to understand each other. This is by far the biggest challenge. And it sounds trite, and I wouldn't have to say it if we were not at war again, and in an extraordinarily dangerous war. And I want to follow the words of the Prime Minister to say a few minutes about what this war is about. The first point, though, is there is no point to this war of any validity whatsoever, remotely. This is a completely, totally unjustified and irrational war of aggression by Israel and the United States against Iran. It is not because of anything that Iran did, anything. And quite the contrary, Iran was begging for negotiations, not just in the last 2 years, but in the last 15 years. I am contacted frequently by Iranian top diplomats. Is there any advice you have to help us with the White House? Is there anyone we can see? Because they were interested in negotiations. This war has nothing to do with Iran's nuclear program at all, because the supreme leader who was killed, murdered, was the first to say Iran does not want a nuclear weapon, it is against Islam. And he issued a religious decree, of course, famously, to make that point. And Iran has behaved consistent with that, despite every possibility of doing otherwise, and every threat that Iran has seen. 10 years ago, actually 11 years ago now, Iran, together with the permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council plus Germany, signed an agreement that put Iran under strict supervision by the International Atomic Energy Agency. And Iran lived scrupulously according to the agreement, the JCPOA, and it was ratified unanimously by the UN Security Council. So what happened? In 2018, Donald Trump ripped it up under the urging of Mr. Netanyahu, the same 2 who are the aggressors of this war. They ripped up the agreement that accomplished what Mr. Trump claims he's aiming to accomplish, to ensure a safe nuclear program, which Iran was the first to insist on, which the Supreme Leader was the first to insist on, and which the country had put itself under full IAEA scrutiny and lived up to that scrutiny rigorously. This has nothing to do with nuclear weapons, because that agreement was already reached. Of course, after Trump ripped up the agreement, then they assassinated Iranian leaders and scientists. They blew up one of the nuclear facilities. This is America's way of saying, why don't you negotiate with us? This is brutal. Of course, last year, the Iranians went back to the negotiating table. I met with President Pezeshkian on the margins of the UN General Assembly. He is a man of peace, undoubtedly. He's a heart surgeon. He spent much of the meeting explaining when you are a surgeon and you're looking down on the patient, you don't even care who the patient is. You know your responsibility is to save the patient. He wants peace. I only felt when I met him is that he's too nice because he's confronting my government, unfortunately. So as they went into the 6th round of negotiations, Israel bombed them with US help. And then the United States joined in. That's called negotiating from an American point of view. Then 6 months passed. The Iranians, they're very nice people. They believe in negotiating. I tried to warn them, actually, speaking with the foreign minister and speaking with others, be careful. They said we need to negotiate. They entered into negotiations again, and then when they were meeting to discuss the results of the forward movement of the negotiations, then Mossad told the CIA, they're all meeting together, let's kill them. That's the idea of what passes for geopolitics today. We've not seen something so crude and so violent since the fascism of World War II. This exceeds every other case. They don't care about what it looks like right now. They're on a murder spree, the United States and Israel. Donald Trump even said, it will be fun to bomb them again. This is a madness. This is not policy. It's extraordinarily dangerous. Now, just to elaborate, what is really happening here? We have two strands that need to be understood. One is the deep underlying policy, which is of Israel and the United States, and the other is the more short-term circumstance. The long-term policy has been, for decades, a policy of hegemony, where the United States aims to run the world and Israel aims to run the Middle East. Nothing more than that. It is hegemony tied together. People often ask, well, is it Israeli lobby making the US do this? Not quite. It is a full partnership. It is Mossad and the CIA working together for a common purpose, that Israel will control its region as part of the United States controlling the world. Of course, this is mass delusion. Can you imagine my country with 4% of the world population presuming to control the world? 4%? And the world doesn't want this, and nor should it want this. But that is the idea. It has been the idea for decades. And when this war started, Mr. Netanyahu tweeted, "This is my 40-year dream come true." That is accurate, by the way. I had to correct myself. I've been saying for years that it's his 30-year dream come true. I missed the 10 years before he became prime minister. But since the day he became prime minister in 1996, his aim has been to control the Middle East for the purpose of what they call Greater Israel. This is a delusion that can get the whole world into world war. The United States is even more delusional because it doesn't aim just at the Middle East, it aims for the world. And right now it aims at China for no reason whatsoever, because China's no threat to the United States. China doesn't have the least interest in destabilizing the US. China doesn't have the least capacity to threaten the United States, to endanger the United States. But yes, China would like to develop, and it's doing so splendidly. It's doing so brilliantly. It's doing so to the benefit of the whole world, by the way, because the technologies that it's bringing are of benefit to the whole world. But this upsets the US idea of hegemony. So the US is taking action. It has invaded Venezuela and Iran for a related purpose: stop the oil flowing to China, control yet another choke point in the world economy. It is delusional, but I'm trying to explain these are the real delusions that we have and that have been long-standing. After 9/11, we know, because we were told by a leading general of the United States, General Wesley Clark, the United States and Israel put together a plan for 7 wars. They have fought all of these wars now. The original plan was 7 wars in 5 years. They had the timetable wrong because they thought it would be one after another. But it turns out that when you're delusional, the wars don't go the way you think. But right after 9/11, Wesley Clark was shown a memorandum that said Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran, to overthrow the governments of those 7 countries. Why? Because they support the cause of Palestine, an absolutely just cause that is part of international law. But from Israel's point of view, that is a threat to Greater Israel. Netanyahu's core ambition is a Greater Israel that includes all of Palestine, as well as parts of Syria, Lebanon, and who knows where else. And our US ambassador to Israel 2 weeks ago, you may have seen, expresses part of the reason why the US and Israel are joined so closely. Mr. Huckabee represents what is called Christian Zionism in the United States. It's a particular vision of evangelicalism. And Mr. Huckabee expressed the view, based on a complete misreading, I would say theologically, of the Old Testament, that, well, Israel has a right to all the land from the Nile to the Euphrates. He was asked again about that. Do you mean that? He said, yes. Do you mean they could take that? He said, yes, if they can take that. That was 2 weeks before the start of this war with Iran. Was he chastised for saying that? Was he fired for saying that? Did somebody explain to him that's not US policy? Not at all. He was no doubt high-fived in the White House because that is a voter base for Mr. Trump. And so this is part of an ideological view as well. Israel will control the Middle East, and the United States will control the world. Thank you. Normally, we have presidents that have some self-control, so this brings me to the second matter. We are not in any self-control at all right now. We do have a war machine in the United States. It was created after World War II. It is unique in history because it has 750 overseas military bases in 80 countries in the world. The security budget in the United States is $1.5 trillion. They want to try their weapon systems, believe me, all the time. And the more they use them, the more contracts come as well. So this is a very powerful war machine. It's the job of a US president to keep the foot on the brakes. Say, no thank you, we don't need more war. That's actually how Mr. Trump campaigned. But it didn't last long, because now there's not a war that Mr. Trump doesn't want and doesn't want to escalate. So he's threatening everybody. And that's the second circumstantial fact, which is between Mr. Trump and Mr. Netanyahu, we are in the hands of two unstable personalities. I mean clinically unstable. There is no natural constraint right now. It's very dangerous what's happening. Obviously, it's dangerous to the people of Tehran who are being carpet bombed every day. It's dangerous for the whole world because there's no automatic stopping point. And the more Trump is encouraged, the farther he will go right now, because our constitutional order in the United States has also broken down. This is the responsibility of Congress under the US Constitution. Only Congress can declare war. But when Congress was invited even to opine on the Iran war, it said, no, thank you, it's not our business. We are in executive rule. We are in rule by the security state. We are not at rule by a constitutional order. And so with an irascible narcissist filled with delusions of grandeur, and his counterpart the same way in Israel, this is extraordinarily dangerous. I have to share, because I'm with my favorite prime minister also, who speaks so clearly, how hard it is to get leaders in the world to speak honestly about this. I attended a UN Security Council meeting about 2 weeks ago when the fighting started that day. I thought, fine, now we'll be able to say this is a brutal violation of the UN Charter. Article 2, paragraph 4, says that no nation may threaten the use of force or use force against another sovereign nation to threaten their territorial integrity or political system. It's as clear as can be. So I went to the Security Council invited to testify. Two interesting things happened. One interesting for me, second for the world. For me, I was blocked from testifying because the British who were in the chair said, no, Mr. Sachs will not testify, even though several of the governments had asked me to testify. And the second was what was actually said at the table. This is the day that Iran was bombed, brutally, the day that the supreme leader was assassinated, the day that 40 leaders were killed, the day that the granddaughter of the supreme leader was killed. What happened? Well, the first speaker from Bahrain, the ambassador, said, we are here to condemn the unprovoked attack on us by Iran. Unprovoked. As Iran shelled the Fifth Fleet command of the United States in Bahrain, unprovoked, after an Israeli-US aggression. I thought I must not be hearing right. Then came the French ambassador. We are here to condemn Iran's attack on its neighboring states. Then came the Danish ambassador. We are here to condemn Iran. Then came the British ambassador. We are here to condemn Iran. Then came the Greek ambassador. We are here to condemn Iran. Even George Orwell could not have made this up. This is the day that Iran was attacked. Only 3 countries condemned Israel and the United States for attacking: Russia, China, and I believe it was Somalia sitting in the seat for the African countries. Only 3. I had to think, what is going on here? I'll tell you what's going on. It's very interesting. Everyone that said that has an American military base on their soil. They are not sovereign countries. They dare not speak. They host the US military, they host the CIA, they watch their backs. Bahrain, Greece, US, UK, France, Denmark, Latvia, Colombia, and Panama. 9 of the UN Security Council members host US military facilities. 2 of them are called national, but with US rights. The other 7 are national US, sovereign US military bases. And remember, the US has the military in 80 countries in the world. So I just want to explain, this is how the US empire works. It doesn't necessarily take the territory of the other country and put it on the map, though Donald Trump longs to do so with Canada. And I'll explain why in a moment. But with the rest, they just put their military and CIA in. That's enough for governments not even to speak when a brutal aggression takes place. It makes the world very, very dangerous indeed right now, because there's no honest discourse. And when I toured the Gulf in November, I met with the leaders in Qatar, in Bahrain, in the UAE. I met them about the Palestinian issue. I wanted them to speak up about Palestine. But they told me that they had other important business, like getting data centers approved by the White House, getting NVIDIA chips approved by the White House, and more. So we don't hear even the most basic honesty. After all, ladies and gentlemen, a genocide just occurred. A genocide before our eyes. The first genocide in history captured on video. And we don't even say a word about it anymore. Instead, we have a board of peace to make sure that the UN does nothing. An initiative to break the United Nations and to make sure that Gaza is properly run by Mr. Kushner, not by the Palestinians. So the situation is not easy. But this is not safe for anybody, especially those who host US military bases. They are magnets for bombs. This is exactly what is happening right now. The Gulf is broadly a US military base, and now it's being attacked as such. It's a bad calculation. It's really important to remember Henry Kissinger's most important adage, that to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. My first recommendation for the world is that all military bases of foreign powers be closed and go home. They serve no purpose at all. They are not defending anybody except the U.S. interest, by the way, these 750 bases. These countries are occupied countries. That's why the U.S. doesn't want to go home, because they serve U.S. interests, not the interests of the host country. But they do not serve the interest of peace, and they do not serve the interest of truth. And we are endangered by all of that. This war will stop when the world leaders follow your prime minister in saying directly and clearly and honestly, this is a war of naked aggression that needs to stop immediately. That's when the war will stop. Unfortunately, it will not stop before then. Just a moment before, I got an alert from a newspaper that Trump has posted again, anyone who is against this war is not MAGA. In other words, anyone who's against this war is against me, and I determine what is for America, even though his entire campaign pledge is he would not do exactly this. So we're not going to see an end of this war until the Gulf countries also say this war needs to stop and Israel needs to go home. And if it survives at all, it needs to live within its borders. And it needs to be reminded the borders are the 4th of June, 1967, if it wants to survive. East Jerusalem, the West Bank, the Golan Heights, Gaza are not Israel. That's how this war can end. And it's a tragedy that the Islamic world is being divided this way, and it's being divided in the absolutely traditional divide et impera, divide and conquer method of empire. It's being played, pure and simple. It should be the GCC and Iran that stand up together immediately and say to the United States and Israel, go home. You're killing us. Stop now. Get out. It is not your place. And if these countries in the Gulf are smart, they will close these bases. They give no protection at all to these countries, only provocation and only a loss of sovereignty. And if the world would say this, we would also have a state of Palestine. Sometimes it seems it's the Arab countries that are the least interested in this, but we know why, for the reasons I'm explaining. The whole world knows the truth, except for two countries, the United States and Israel. You'd get almost every vote. We'd lose one more because Micronesia has to vote with the United States by compact. Other than that, the whole world would stand up and say, hallelujah, we have justice with the state of Palestine. And this is what needs to be done as a result of this aggression, because it is precisely this aggression which is trying to head off that reality. These are wars to remake the Middle East so that Israel does not have to face any kind of justice and honesty and international law. Now, let me turn briefly to the bigger picture, if I might. The United States, unfortunately, is doing this in all regions of the world in one way or another. The U.S. is in a neurotic state, not just our neurotic president. But the neurosis is that China is big and successful and growing. I can tell you from my own experience of 45 years of visiting China, typically many times a year. China is enormously successful, very well governed, looking ahead, making great strides, and benefiting the whole world in what it's doing. It is not a threat to anybody, actually. Even in the South China Sea and the contested borders, it is trying to avoid U.S. Navy choke points. This is what we call the security dilemma. China is not aiming to invade any place. It is aiming to avoid U.S.-imposed choke points, which, by the way, are freely discussed in our journals and magazines and lectures. The choke points, the first island chain, for example. What a horrible idea, the first island chain. That's an idea of one of our worst foreign ministers, Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, who said, we will limit China's access to the Blue Ocean by the first island chain. Everything is against someone else. So a lot of what's happening in the world, whether it's invading Venezuela or attacking Iran, is also about the U.S. policies to try to corral the world energy sector so that it has more leverage against China. It's to stop the flow or to regulate the flow, to put it under U.S. control. By my count, the United States indirectly controls about 2/3 of the world's oil flows if you count countries that have U.S. military bases or are under U.S. control. And it's aiming for 3 more. 1, to bring Russia to account through its international sanctions regime. 2nd, to bring Venezuela into account through kidnapping the president and threatening the government with further murders or kidnappings. And 3rd, to bring Iran into the fold by reversing Iran's revolution in 1979, which was a revolution to reverse a police state that had been imposed by the United States in 1953, when the United States and Britain, the CIA and MI6, overthrew a democratically elected government of Prime Minister Mossadegh and installed a police state. So if you add those 3 countries, the United States would control almost 90% of the world's oil exports. That's the aim. That's part of this tactic of hegemony. It's not incidental. It's not coincidental that all of this is happening. Even the U.S. bombing in Nigeria. The U.S. bombed Nigeria in November. That's to remind another oil state, be careful, we can bomb you too. That wasn't about Boko Haram or anything else. That was looking down the list of all of the oil states that are not quite in U.S. control. An Italian journalist put it very well. He recently posted, Americans are very lucky. Every time they bring freedom to another country, they find oil. That's what's going on. Let's get beyond this because we have other things in the world to do. I'm especially annoyed because I'm a development economist for the last half-century. Development economics is not easy. I don't mean the subject, I mean the practice. You have to invest. You have to build infrastructure. You have to build power lines. You have to build roads. You have to build ports. You have to educate children, which takes 20 years of hard effort of parents and teachers and schools. It's hard work, development, but it's so easy to bomb the children, to destroy the infrastructure, as if this is a game, or what the United States now calls statecraft. We have, I'm sorry to use the word, a thug as a Treasury Secretary. Why do I say that? Because his job is to impose sanctions to bring down other economies. He actually explained this explicitly in Davos. Also a little bit of a dubious meeting, I must say, where he said that we wanted to put maximum pressure on Iran. So we put sanctions to crush the economy, to stop Iran from earning foreign exchange, to make the currency crash, to make shortages. And then he says openly, and this brought people out onto the streets. We call this economic statecraft. Now, as a development economist, I find this annoying, to tell you the truth, because it takes a generation to build an economy. You need peace, you need social harmony, you need good public policies, you need plans, you need accurate public administration, honesty, decency. It's hard work, very hard work. It's building. And war brings it all down as if it's nothing, as if we're just playing a game, as if we're not trying to make the world better for our children and our grandchildren, which is, I think, for all of us parents in the world, our ultimate objective, to not see the world broken. So our real job is economic development. And I want to say a few words about that. First, it works if you do it. It works very well. There are no shortcuts in economic development. Contrary to what Mr. Trump thinks, and he developed nothing in his lifetime except stealing and grift, I'm afraid to say, even when he was just a real estate developer in New York. It is not stealing someone else's oil that is development. Development is building infrastructure, educating children, and fostering businesses. That's development, and protecting environment along the way. And it is feasible. In fact, it is a very high return activity. But you can't steal it, so it might not be as much fun to Mr. Trump. And it requires a time horizon longer than 15 minutes. It requires a time horizon of a generation. You need to understand this takes time, but it's worth doing. It's our main role in life, is to be good stewards for our children and our children's children and for the future. China has been wonderful in this effort. China was a very, very poor country when I visited it the first time in 1981 with my wife here, and we saw poverty. Now there is no poverty in China, and China is at the cutting edge of most of the technologies that we need for the green and digital transformation for the future. How did China do it? They invested consistently for more than 40 years at high rates, very well planned, to build 50,000 kilometers of fast rail, tens of thousands of kilometers of 5G. They built the infrastructure, they educated the children to make superb universities, and they built leading private businesses that are now the internationally competitive leaders in their field. and they achieved 10% per year economic growth while doing it. Absolutely astounding. Why do I use this example? Because I believe that it sets a good benchmark for all of us. Not every country will achieve 10% growth. China started incredibly impoverished, and so it had a lot of headroom. But we can achieve rapid economic development in this era because the technologies are so good and they're moving forward so fast. And the last thing we want to do is to militarize them, to use them for destruction. AI is really good. It can be excellent for diagnostics, for new drug development, for online education, for government services, for efficient agriculture, for smart grids, for highly efficient cities and public transport, all of it excellent. But what is the U.S. doing? It's militarizing AI faster than we can see. It's attacking its leading companies because they're not bending to the Pentagon will, for heaven's sake. So this is the strategy that every country needs to follow. But a second point that's very critical is that development now with these technologies is a regional activity, not only a national activity. Of course, it depends on smart cities and smart rural towns. It depends on good governance at all levels of government. But it also requires governance and government above the national level. This is why I'm such a fan of ASEAN, and why I also applaud you, Prime Minister, for the brilliant presidency of ASEAN that you led last year. And that was really brilliant leadership because ASEAN made many, many important advances that will last in history, including decisions, crucial decisions to build an ASEAN-wide green infrastructure. And this is going to be one of the great legacies of Malaysia's ASEAN presidency. And when I was in Manila just a few weeks ago, they're completely determined to carry it forward, which is excellent. You've set something in motion that is absolutely going to work. ASEAN is a region of 700 million plus people, very dynamic, 11 countries, and with great growth potential. Your natural way forward, first of all, is close integration within the region, because that allows for all of the economies of scope, of scale, of specialization, of diversification, and of smart systems. A clean grid for power requires that you tap solar here, wind here, geothermal here, ocean here, in an expanded, large, regional, interconnected grid. And that's a core decision that was taken last year to build the ASEAN power grid, to implement this vision, to get it done in real time. So this is extraordinarily important. It's also true that geography will matter a lot. China will be an extraordinarily important partner for the ASEAN countries. It's your close, dynamic neighbor. The interconnections are absolutely undoubted. Anyone who would dare to say, and unfortunately that's my country, don't use Huawei, don't do this, don't use a DeepSeek, only use this. This is absurd, ladies and gentlemen. Your close partnerships will be with China and with India without question, because that is geography, culture, and history. And that's extremely important. I hope the United States can be constructive and play a role, but it's halfway around the world. It's not your security and it's not your prosperity. Your security can only come by cooperation within this region. That's the only security. And your prosperity can only come first and foremost by interconnections within this region. Neighbors matter. Neighborhoods matter. There's no gift coming from halfway around the world. And I would dare Americans to name 2 Malaysian cities. I'm sorry to say it, they can't name 2 cities in any other country. So the attention span is limited. Mark Twain, our famous novelist, once said that war is the God's way of teaching geography to Americans. They look at a map for the first time. By the way, there's a little clip you can find online of a prankster approaching members of the European Parliament with a map, but without the country names, and saying, "Excuse me, where is Iran on the map?" And the members of Parliament can't find Iran on the map. They know to bomb it, but they don't know where it is. So your neighborhood will count a lot, and it will be the basis for peace and prosperity. And I want to just close by saying how much I admire this country. I've been coming to Malaysia now for 40 years. This is the 40th anniversary of my first visit when I was hosted by the central bank on the first visit. And it is a great honor and it's a privilege to be here. And you have the most magnificent Prime Minister, and I thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sachs. I'm not making comments because I think the clarity and the strength and his sheer commitment to the cause of peace and justice is abundantly clear. And of course, as a friend, and more so as a person who's been following his writings, initially more about development economics, and now I think to express with such passion on the issues of freedom and justice and truth, that speaks volumes for a person whom we regard as a rare public intellectual. So a public intellectual is not just imbibed knowledge and understanding, but who believes with such strong conviction about the sense of truth and justice. And there's, of course, a clear deficit. In our framework of Madani, we talk about development, yes. We talk about digital transformation and the rest. But we always say it must be imbibed with values and humanity for us to survive. And I think, and I believe you would share with me if I say that people, friends like Jeffrey Sachs, is much needed in the world with so much hypocrisy and contradiction in the leaders and even many intellectuals who lack that courage and no passion for justice, for sure, but there's deficit in trust precisely because we fail in imbibing that sort of message. But mind you, Professor Sachs, having said that, we have huge issues having to say the truth to many great countries and powers. We happen to be in a minority, and statements even against wars, against aggression, seem to be seen as an expression from a radical wing or a leftist sort of a bar. So I'm not suggesting that it is easy, but pray to God that we are given that courage, and the country, the people, and more so intellectuals like you will stand and defend these principles and the ideals. I will probably invite a few questions. Well, he's supposed to leave at 5. Now we have extended time a bit. With your kind permission, Minister. If you choose to overrule me, I can. You see, they overruled me many times in the cabinet, and he's one of them. Okay, ada soalan, one or two, then we'll adjourn. Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you so much. That was overwhelming. I'm just curious, what is your views on the resolve or the solution of the crisis? Because I think many of us here think this is not a war, this is an invasion of the US and Israel towards Iran. What is your suggestion here for us to have at least a hope there? Thank you.
How do you view?
Yeah, this is certainly an invasion, and this is certainly, as I explained, the idea that Iran will become, once again, a vassal of the United States. It was a vassal of the United States from 1953 to 1979 because the U.S. installed a regime that it then backed with military bases and that operated on behalf of the United States, the Pahlavi Shah. And in 1979, the Iranian Revolution created a sovereign nation once again. When when the government was overthrown in 1953, it was because the Prime Minister, Mossadegh, had made a blunder, one could say. He expressed the view that the oil under the ground belonged to Iran. But the British and the Americans knew, no, it belongs to us, thank you. And so they decided quickly to overthrow him. We're still living in that context. This is a revenge match by the United States in a way, but with the added feature that Israel is out of control. It is a full partner with the United States, and it acts with complete impunity. I've never seen anything actually more murderous in the current period than the Israeli behavior. It's shocking. And there's lots of bad behavior in the world, but what Israel did to Gaza was genocide before our eyes. And what it's doing right now in Beirut is, as one of the Israeli generals said yesterday, we will make Beirut unlivable. What kind of talk is this in the 21st century? And how is this not universally condemned immediately? This is shocking to me. But as I explained to you, there are strange alliances. The most important is the CIA and Mossad, because they run the two countries primarily. But then there are also ideological alliances, as our ambassador, as I mentioned, also views things as if the world is a 5th century BC map to be interpreted the way you want. So yes, this is an invasion. It is going to be very hard to stop, by the way. I don't believe it's going to stop because Trump is just going to stop. It's possible. He's capable of any weirdness of killing a lot of people and then stopping. He's capable of that because he's completely incoherent and inconsistent. But I think it's more likely that it's only going to stop when the world has revulsion of what's happening. My advice is make clear in rhetoric that the economic crisis which is about to hit the world, which will be very deep, is caused by two countries, Israel and the United States. It's not caused by Iran. It's not caused by Iran shelling anybody. It's caused by an aggression by two countries that had no justification whatsoever, and to push those two countries at the cost of complete world shame to stop. But only if that shame is there will that happen. And as I said, Europe is quiet, and even the Gulf countries are quiet. They find it very hard to speak with an American military base on their soil. But they better learn quickly. If they want to save themselves, they had better speak the truth.
Right? Yes, please.
Professor Sachs and also Prime Minister Anwar. I was wondering if, my name is Kim, and I'm actually Professor of ASEAN Studies representing International Islamic University. We have had the benefit and privilege of meeting in Harvard some 30 years ago, but
Great.
back then you were seated quite far away from me, and I'm still feeling some distance between you and me right now. But my question is very direct and very immediate. President Donald Trump yesterday issued something akin to an appeal that all countries affected by the crisis in the Straits of Hormuz should come and provide some kind of security to their oil tanker or fleets, given the fact that they affect their energy security. In your speech, you spoke about the importance of collaborations and cooperations. When President Donald Trump is calling for cooperation with very specific mention of China, of other countries too, how should those countries respond to Donald Trump during his time of need?
We can solve Donald Trump's problems so easily. I know a nice rest home. He has, sorry, I won't go that way. To open the Strait of Hormuz is straightforward. Israel and the United States stop killing Iranians. That's all. We don't need warships. We just need an end of the aggression. It's very simple. Donald Trump did not make an appeal for cooperation per se. He made an appeal for cooperation for war. That's not the same thing. How bizarre he is, by the way, that he calls on China to do this, when China was the target of this. And believe me, China understands what's going on. So China's not about to respond in the way that he thinks. Maybe the visit that Trump is supposed to take to Beijing will get canceled. I think that would be advisable for all sides, by the way. What a time to meet when one of the parties is a brazen aggressor. What he should do is stop the war. So he doesn't have to make an appeal to anyone else to bail out this illegal, destructive action, and especially to do it by force. That's what he was asking to do. We will clear the Strait of Hormuz. No, Mr. Trump, go home. Israel, go back to your borders. Finally, 4th of June, 1967, stop bothering the rest of humanity. This is really the key. And if this were explained to him, maybe he's very confused. But it should be explained to him clearly that the Strait of Hormuz can open. And I have published today, posted, I think it's up online, but I posted a 5-point process to end this war. And it starts with the United States and Israel stopping the aggression, with the end of Iranian retaliation when that happens. But it says that that's not enough because the US and Israel will just come back and bomb again. The GCC countries need to retake sovereign control of those bases and say that they cannot be used by the United States against their neighbor. They must do that. It's their responsibility not to host US bases attacking their neighboring country. And there will be no peace until there is a state of Palestine. It's important to understand, and maybe I'll just mention this very quickly. Netanyahu and his American advisors published 30 years ago a document called Clean Break. Clean Break was a document that said we're not going to engage in peace in exchange for a Palestinian state. Israel is going to remain sovereign from the Jordan River into the Mediterranean Sea. It's very ironic when people chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. They think that this is a Palestinian chant. This is the Likud doctrine from 1977, the founding charter of Netanyahu's party, that said Israel will remain in full sovereignty over Palestine. That's the issue here. And until there is a state of Palestine alongside the state of Israel, there will not be peace. What Clean Break said was, we will overthrow any government that supports the Palestinian cause. And that's where those 7 countries came in that I mentioned. They were supporting the Palestinian cause one way or another. So you had to get rid of Gaddafi, you had to get rid of Saddam Hussein, you had to get rid of Bashar al-Assad, you had to get rid of the supreme leader to kill them. That's his idea. How extraordinarily crude is this? That rather than diplomacy, we overthrow any government that objects to our aggression. And yet the United States is party to this because it fits the American hegemonic idea. So when Mr. Trump posted that yesterday, you could say a couple of things. First, he is utterly delusional. Second, the United States cannot accomplish what it said it was going to accomplish, even in the narrowest terms. To appeal to China is extraordinary. It shows we have a very confused president, very confused. And the third part is he could open the straits today. No problem. Go home.
So on behalf of all of you, may I again express my profound regard, thanks to our friend and a friend of many others throughout the world. You have watched his interviews, and the coverage in the social media, and see such impressive following. There are still many of us, scholars, individuals, activists, who still believe in truth and have a courage to express themselves with such clarity. So thank you again, Professor Sachs. We welcome you. You are part of this country. You are welcome at any time. And I will declare no visa necessary. Thank you again.
Thank you, Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar bin Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia, and Professor Jeffrey Sachs for leading such a meaningful and insightful discussion. We will now proceed with the photography session. May I respectfully invite Yang Amat Berhormat Prime Minister and Professor Sachs to kindly come down from the stage for the official photography session. Members of the media and official photographers are also invited to kindly move forward and position yourselves in front of the stage to capture the significant moment. We would also like to invite all distinguished guests to come forward and join the group photography session. May I now request everyone to rise as Yang Amat Berhormat Prime Minister departs the hall. On behalf of the organizers, the Ministry of Higher Education, we would like to extend our sincere appreciation to Yang Amat Berhormat Prime Minister, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, distinguished guests, and all participants for your presence and contribution